Oh, man. Some people. One of my favorite people, because he loves gabagool. He loves pizza frites. He loves galamad. Have you ever had Scoongils, Philly?
Yes, I have.
Oh,
Yes, I have.
man.
I love it all. I love it all. Although, I mean, do I look like I miss any meals here or what?
No. Hey, Philly, you and Big Sills look like, you're like me, man. We're not half a sandwich kind of guys.
No. That's like a tease to me, Like don't tease me with a half sandwich.
Dude, somebody came to me the other day and they go, "Hey, you want a beer?" I go, "No, I want 6."
That's it. I know. That's me to a T.
You want a hot dog? I go, "No, I want 3."
Right. Exactly.
See, I learned this from my grandpa years ago, Philly. See, my aunt Yolanda came over and goes, "Hey, Danny, you want a piece of cake?" My grandfather goes, No, I want a hunk."
Right. No, that's true. I'm exactly the same way. People always like, just can't you have just it in moderation? No, I can't. I want it all or nothing.
That's right, man.
Yeah.
Absolutely with you here. Okay, speaking of that, Dick Vermeil went on WIP this week, and he kind of has a different opinion on how to play Jalen Hurts. He said this. They asked him, they go, "Don't you think it's in the best interest of the Eagles to try to pull back Jalen's rushing attempts?" And you know what Vermeil said? Vermeil was like this. He goes, "No. Run him as much as possible. Keep playing him the way he is. He's not Patrick Mahomes. Why would you take one of his best assets on moving the chains away from him and limit him? He's got more ability." Hey, if Tom Brady could run, Philly, this is Vermeil's mentality. If Tom Brady could run, he would. But he can't. He's got to win games throwing the ball. This guy doesn't necessarily have to do that, which gives them more opportunity to win games in multiple ways. Does Dick Vermeil have something here?
I mean, who am I to tell Dick Vermeil, he's wrong? It's hard for me to say it. But I mean, from my own personal standpoint, I do worry about the hits and running too much. Like, at what point does that start to wear him out? So, I mean, I think, yeah, it's nice to run him and use him to his fullest. And I'm not saying they should slow it down all that much. But I mean, I just think that if we're talking longevity of his career, at some point, you would think it has to be dialed back at some point. I don't know when. Maybe it's not this year, but at some point, I think you have to dial back.
I brought this topic up earlier, too. The Eagles may not have the best player at their position at any position in the NFL, but outside of Kelsey, maybe, and if you can debate Lane. But I will say this, dude, their duos are spectacular. What's the best Eagle duo, in your opinion? Devonta Smith, AJ, Bradbury, Slay, or Mulata and Lane?
Devonta, AJ.
Why?
Because I think they're both literally top 5 wide receivers. I think the upside of Devonta Smith is so great that I just don't. Bradbury, Slay, they're older, right? Lane Johnson, he's older. Jordan Millar is younger. These guys are both like under 27 years old. These guys are both entering the prime of their career. So to me, their best years are still ahead of them. So I have to go Devonta Smith and AJ Brown.
I listen. I said this. I think they may be the best duo in the NFL too. And someone brought up the guys, Jamar Chase and Higgins in Cincinnati, and you bring up Waddle and Tyreek Hill in Miami. And I went, you know what, though? What do those guys do in the run game?
Right.
I mean, A.J. Brown knocks guys out in the run game. He did that in Tennessee. You could never take them. The only problem I had with him is sometimes he takes plays off backside when the play's not coming to him. But other than that, in the run game, dude, he's knocking guys out. They've got 3 sets of duos, man, that are just absolutely spectacular.
Right. I agree. I mean, and the other thing is, if you look at AJ Brown and Devonta Smith, they're not the same type of receiver. They're completely like almost opposite, but they're complementary, right? You got the big physical receiver in AJ Brown, then you got the great route runner, great hands in Devonta Smith. I just think that they're such a great pairing. I think it's unprecedented. I think it could be unprecedented. I really do.
Let me throw this at you on Jordan Davis. I said this today about him. If he doesn't start by the end of the year and is not a starter in his second year, we got a problem, Houston, don't we?
It depends how it depends. I mean,
are you high on him? Are you high on him?
Yes, I believe, for the record, I believe he will be starting by the end of the year. I do, and I think he's going to have a big impact this year. I'm expecting big things for Jordan Davis. However, I mean, yeah, if he's not starting, yeah, it could be disappointing. But what if Fletcher Cox is having just a great year? I don't know. Like, I often think of Brandon Graham. Like Brandon Graham, if you look Brandon Graham first, 3 years, everybody called him a bust, but now he's still having his best year. So I think it would be a surprise to me if he didn't start, but I don't know. I would be ready to say that he's a bust yet. It would depend how things go.
Would this be the ultimate fantasy for the Eagles and the organization if both Jalen Carter and Davis are starting by the end of the year?
Yeah. I mean,
that's what you think. That's what they're rolling towards. They want to do that.
Yeah, I think that's what's going to happen. I think it's going to happen because if you remember last year, Fletcher Cox was complaining at one point he was getting too many snaps. I think in order to play, you're gonna cut his snaps down to keep him fresher. I believe Jordan Davis and Jalen Carter will be the starters, and I believe they're going to be monsters, both of them. I think we have the opportunity to have the greatest pairing of defensive tackles in our history.
Why is Derek Barnett on this team?
Because they love to torture Philly.500. There's nothing more they want to do than torture me with Derek Barnett. I don't know. I guess we need penalties, but or penalties not enough. I don't know. It drives me crazy. It really does.
Especially when you have Xander's take. He's a good number 5 edge rusher. And this guy was the 13th pick in the draft. And he's $3 million on the cap. You look like you got agita.
I would pay. I'd take a $30 million cap hit to get him. Listen, you got a guy like Yannick Ngakoue out there, free agency, 9.5 sacks last year. Bring him in. Get rid of Derek Barr. I understand they're trying to be loyal to the guy that they drafted, but come on, man, he stinks. He stinks. I'm not a Barnett fan.
Me either there. Hey, what's your take on Sirianni, man, coming out and really giving Quez a lot of love here, man, saying that he had a great spring, was emphatic. I mean, dude, I think they want him to make that team, Philly.
I do too, because listen, what he offers in speed is something that, is hard to come by. I think if he could develop into that third wide receiver, it'd be great. But I got to say, I kind of like Quez Watkins. Like, I haven't given up on him. I kind of like how he handled everything, right? Like, if you remember Jalen Reagor a couple years ago, complaining, deleting his Twitter stuff, always having problems. He posted something basically going to make everybody pay, and he's been quiet. And he's just been quiet going about his business. So I kind of like that. I want to see what Quez does. I'm very curious. But I still believe Quez has a lot of talent. I do.
Have the Eagles done enough? Listen, I've said this to you before. Look, you draft to win your division, and you draft to win your conference. That being said, you got the Kansas City Chiefs once again on your schedule. Has this football team done enough to beat Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid?
I think they have done pretty much everything that they have possibly could have done. With the circumstances that they had. I do think that they are better on offense. I think they have another dimension with the running game. Like, I think DeAndre Swift in the passing game is going to be huge for the Eagles. it depends how quick Jalen Carter develops, because you are losing Hargrave that had 11 sacks last year. So yeah, I think they could beat him. I do. Now going into Kansas City is always hard. So
your new name is Mayor 500 now, because you're running for mayor with that.
I'm a politician, baby. I'm a politician.
Well, hey, no, man. I mean, that's what people say about Howie Roseman now, man. I mean, you think he's the second coming of like the greatest general managers of all time here, man. He's changed your opinion, though, right?
He's definitely changed my opinion. I said 3 good drafts, and I would apologize to the guy. I did that. But, when you really look at what they had last year and then what they have this year, I mean, how do you replace Hargrave, who had 11 sacks last year?
That's a great question.
You go out and get Jalen Carter in the draft. I mean, yeah, he may not be at the same level as Hargrave his rookie year, but, I mean, upside-wise, it's tremendous.
So what do you think the loss of Hargrave will be this year?
I think you lose some sacks early on in the year. I really think that this offense is going to have to carry the defense early. I think because you got a lot of young guys, a lot of moving parts. But I think by the end of the year, I expect the defense to come on. So once you get into that Kansas City game, week 8, 9, whatever it is, that's when I think the defense starts to step up. But right off the bat, I think you lose out on sacks. You can't tell me losing out a guy that had 11 sacks isn't a big deal. It is. But, I mean, I don't know what better replacement than to get a rookie, maybe the best player in the draft at that position. He just needs to play and develop.
Here's how I look at that. I look at that in the micro, you're going to lose experience and, like you said, the sacks. But in the macro here, where you're looking at big picture here, I think eventually, again, like I said, some of these people in here can't read or hear. I said when he came out of college, I said that this guy has as much talent as Jerome Brown, but he's inexperienced as an NFL player until he gets in the game. Obviously, that's reality. But I think he has every opportunity to give them more of an upgrade at the position. So I don't know. Maybe by the end of the year, Philly.
Yeah. Well, that's what I'm thinking.
He's a better run stopper and he's as good a pass rusher.
Yeah, I mean, you got to give the rookies time to develop. I mean, to say that he's going to come in as a rookie and be as dominant as Hargrave was last year, I don't know how realistic that is. But you give him time, you give him snaps, you let him play. In the long run, I think you're getting a way more talented guy. So I think the offense carries you early, and then I think the defense comes on at the end of the year. That's what I think is going to happen.
I agree with you. Yesterday we had Gary Cobb on, and I was pretty shocked when he said this. I said, hey, right now in their careers, who would you take, Randall Cunningham or Jalen Hurts? And I was pretty shocked. He said he thinks Jalen Hurts is a little bit ahead of where Randall was. Dude, Randall Cunningham was freaking electric.
Yeah.
I mean, electric. But he said the difference is that the maturity level of Randall wasn't where Jalen is, and it's easier to coach. I think, those guys were really boys back when they played together. I think Randall was difficult to coach, and I know he was. People told me he was, where Jalen's easier to coach, and that's probably why he's further ahead than Randall was at this time. You buy that?
Partly. I mean, I think that from everything we've heard about Randall, I do think Hurts is more mature. I think so. But if Randall Cunningham had Buddy Ryan, he lost I forget his quarterback coach. He lost his quarterback coach really when he was getting in that development stage. They really didn't teach him how to play the quarterback. If you put Randall Cunningham right now in today's football with, let's say, Andy Reid or even Nick Sirianni, I think he's the best quarterback in the league. So, I do agree in that. I think Hurts is more mature, and I do think he's further ahead, especially as a passer. But I don't think Randall came into the same situation.
That's a great, and we brought that up yesterday too, that the coaching that Randall got was none. And then when they tried to coach him, they brought the ultimate guardrail coach in John Gruden.
Right.
And that thing just absolutely imploded on him because instead, see, the one thing they do in Philadelphia with Jalen, they let Jalen, like Vermeil said, go be you. They
Right.
wanted him to be a completely different guy
Mm-hmm.
and play within the pocket and such. And John tried taking away that running. Well, shit, the running ability is what's, like you said, Randall Cunningham reminds me of Patrick Mahomes.
Right. I mean,
in today's NFL.
Right. I mean, the thing with Randall too, he had who was the best offensive lineman? Ron Salt on that team. It was a horrible offensive line, no real run game. Keith Byers was good in the passing game, but you had Fred Barnett, Calvin Williams. You didn't get Chris Carter that was in Minnesota. He left before. Mike Quick was at the end of his career. He never had the talent around him, and he never really had, to me, the offensive coaches to teach him. If you put, I swear, I think if you took Andy Reid when he was the Eagles coach and you put Randall Cunningham on that team, I think Randall wins 3 Super Bowls. Nobody can convince me otherwise. I think Randall was that good, but he didn't have that. Jalen Hurts. So
you don't think Jalen Hurts is a better player than what Randall was?
Randall's my favorite quarterback ever, so it's very hard, But no, I think Jalen Hurts has the intangibles that Randall may not have had. I think he's a natural leader. I think the players love him. I think he works hard. I don't think he's like arrogant. Like Randall, Randall's a little bit like hang out Arsenio Hall and Whitney Houston and all that kind of stuff. He has the makeup, but I mean, just from a pure like athletic standpoint, I've never seen a guy who could punt 90 yards, throw 85 yards, and run the way Randall Cunningham did. I just never seen it.
He was an absolutely gifted guy. Hey, did you ever hear the story on why Chris Carter got fired in Philly?
Somewhat. I know something to do with like drugs or something, right? Wasn't it?
Here's what happened. So he started missing practices, and Jerome and Seth, Keith Jackson, all those guys, they went to Buddy Ryan and they told him these guys over the top doing drugs. Buddy Ryan called them in the next day and said, "You'll thank me for this. I'm releasing you."
Yeah.
And dude, he was the best receiver on the team.
I know.
And he goes, nobody could believe it. He made a call though to Dennis Green and said that, "Hey, look, this guy needs to go to rehab, but we're releasing him. He doesn't need football right now. He needs help."
Yeah. And
he called Dennis. Dennis said, "When you get your shit cleaned up, you can then it's a Hall of Fame career after that." You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And get this. And like coming up next week is the anniversary on the 25th of Jerome's death. And I'll tell you this, my wife and I were sitting there and there's Chris Carter leaning against the wall next to Reggie and Seth and everybody, bawling in tears. And all the Eagle guys were all there. I'll tell you what, man, Philadelphia Eagle guys loved that guy. The best thing they ever did, and they saved his life, was firing him because he was so deep into cocaine.
Yeah, I remember the game he came back. It was, I think, a Monday night game, and he ran over to Buddy on the sideline and shook his hand, to tell him thank you. And Buddy stuck up for him. He's like, all he does is catch touchdown passes. Remember, that was Buddy's excuse. But I'm glad it worked out for Chris Carter, but man, I really would have loved to have that guy.
Hey, dog, he should have been the greatest receiver in the history of Philadelphia Eagle history.
Oh yeah.
It's even more kind of crazy about Chris and our relationship. He and I were in the supplemental draft that year with Bosworth, and he's the only one that panned out.
Yeah. Right.
My friend, it is always great.
Thank you so much.
My favorite Paisan. Make sure you catch out his podcast. He's one of the best that does it. And I tell you what, man, you're growing like a weed, dude. And I appreciate you coming on. And by the way, very few people get to come on with Big Sills. You got to be a bigger star than Big Sills. And I think you're becoming a pretty big star.
You're
my
too
kid.
nice. You're too nice. Thank you, man.
I appreciate you coming and doing this. Thank you, Philly.
All right, man. Take care.
You got to make sure you hit the like button. Make sure you check out his podcast as well. Hit the like button. The most underrated Eagles. When I come back out of the timeout, we're going to hit on that next. Keep it here on the National Football Show.